Banks are literally printing money right now thanks to an emergency program of the Fed, and I'm going to break that all down for you today. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I want you to know what's going on here because you can see that the crisis that's been created inside the financial system is still continuing. I'm going to show you three parts in this video. You're going to see what the central banks are actively doing, and then we're going to look at this emergency that's been taking place and has given the banks an excuse to make more money yet again. And then we're going to look at another aspect we all need to pay attention to right here in this video. Let's begin by taking a look at the central banks rethinking forecasting after failures on inflation. The ECB, the Fed, and the BOE overlooked potential for global price spikes after the end of 2020 and what happened with Russia and Ukraine. And so what we see here is that, look, you cannot do this forecasting model of saying, yeah, we're going to be at 2%. All of these things were real funny until they started to say inflation is transitory. How many people remember that? Well, I saw it everywhere. I saw it basically from the very top, from the central bankers, all the way down into the YouTube world. I saw it over and over again. Team transitory. We even heard that term. And it kind of seems like an obvious lie today, but only to those who are paying attention. It was funny with the whole transitory thing because some people were saying, no, absolutely not. But they also then were the same people that were saying the Federal Reserve would not increase interest rates. And there was a very select few who were actually saying the right thing in both circumstances. So be able to pinpoint those individuals out there. Okay. ECB balance sheet QT. Okay. This is QT means quantitative tightening, and that means getting rid of the stuff that they bought. So on their balance sheet, they're getting rid of it. 1.94 trillion euro. So let's say 2 trillion euro, give or take, down from that peak. Unbelievable. And falling under 7 trillion euro at this time. So you will see that. They got rid of 47% of the assets that they purchased throughout this 2020 period. Interesting. Now, there's still over $7 trillion, and when are they going to stop? The expectation is coming around next year, but that's it. You could see that. Now, massive. Obviously, you compare it to the years prior, which, seems like yesterday, but the financial crisis time frame where they basically had little to none. And now today we can congratulate them that they only have $7 trillion or 7 trillion euro worth. And this is the kind of thing that happens. The normalization of the balance sheet that we kept hearing about back then is really a new normal. And that's why we don't hear about it anymore. This is something to keep note of. The expansion of the balance sheet, the slight reduction in balance sheet, and the inevitable expansion yet again. More inflation. What has happened though more recently? Fed likely to end bank funding program in March. This is the Bank Term Funding Program, which was set to expire March 11th, 2024. So this is a 1-year program. The Federal Reserve set this up as we had the different banks starting to fail in 2023. That was SVB and Signature Bank. All these other banks started failing. And of course, that spread around the world. Credit Suisse, you know what happened. If not, please join me on the channel here because I do break down all of the absolute most important information that gets into the absolute finite information, the details that you really don't find because, look, I'm not going for the clicks. I'm not going for the views. I'm going for what I believe is most important. And this Bank Term Funding Program is something that I've been talking about extensively since it came out. And we are getting to the point where it's going to expire. And that leads me to something extremely, extremely important. You see this chart here? Well, let me cover a few points from it. You got to understand something. Banks can go in and they can borrow from this emergency program, okay? The BTFP. they can borrow from that. And currently at this time, it's at the time of recording. By the time you watch it, if you're watching this, a month later, might be a different story. But at this time, they're borrowing at 4.8%. They can borrow at 4.8%, okay? But then they can take that cash and they can park that at the Fed and earn on that 5.4%. So you see what's happening here. They're printing money left, right, and center all day long. They're doing it from morning until night. Think about that. They found the easiest, foolproof, absolutely unbelievable way for them on that arbitrage, on that spread, to make guaranteed, actually for them, it's guaranteed money. Not much, but this is something that they can just keep throwing cash into. And we see the reserves, everybody in my Finance Friday live classes, Money GPS Finance Live, which is a closed group of people. Link in the description if you want that. We talk about the reserves all the time. And you will note specifically that those reserves have been rising. And during this period of time, as they've been rising, this has as well. Do you see basically the investors, the banks, they've been going in and utilizing that BTFP more and more and more and more and more. And then they take that cash and they put it at the Fed for their reserves. And do you think the Fed they don't like this? Of course they like it. They love those reserves being over there because that has a stimulative effect on the stock market. That's like mic drop moment, explosions, rainbows in the sky, unicorns are flying everywhere. You got to put the pieces together. Understand this. This temporary program is one reason of many that we have seen the reserves increase. And reserves, what is a reserve? So think about this. You are an individual. You take your $100 to the bank, commercial bank. You deposit that at the bank. Well, that bank is able to then loan out a percentage of that, fractional reserve banking. They're able to loan that out into the marketplace. They can, do a home loans. They can take that cash, whatever they want to do with it. But it's fractional reserve. Right now, of course, the reserve requirement is 0. But let's just assume there was some reserves. They take that cash and they park the cash at the Federal Reserve. Those are excess reserves, anything on top of whatever the reserve requirement is. Excess reserves happen to correlate very, very closely with the stock market performance. So we've had rising reserves. And what have we had with the stock market? That's right. That's what the money mirror method is all about. That's how I was able to pinpoint the exact bottom of the stock market last year. That's how I was able to determine so many other things, because I am watching the markets at this level of depth, which you do see others, go into it, but their whole interest is to provide a video that gets you to watch from all the way to the beginning, all the way to the end. No, I am here for the people who actually want to know the truth. I'm not trying to make a video that has all this, I watched one guy, his video, and I basically got a seizure while I was watching it. It's so much flashing on the screen. Here we have it. You could see that bank term funding program, that rate of 4.85% is becoming more and more attractive. And at the bottom, or at the blue line there, is basically the interest on the reserve balances. So at 5.4%, you see the difference in between these two. Like I said, by the time you're watching this, you're going to be getting other information, but you can assume that if you're watching this when it first releases, that the rates are at this, and we have seen the largest spread in between these two right now. It's becoming more and more attractive, okay? And that's the deal. That's the situation. And this is, in fact, creating stimulus at a time in which we have quantitative tightening. So when you're asking yourself, look, buddy, I thought you said that, the market was weak, the economy is weak. It's not. Look at the stock market. Like when you start breaking it down at the money mirror method levels, then you start understanding. Yeah, it's stimulus. It's coming from one place or another. And so that's going to stop in March. This BTFP, that's the expectation. 1 year, we give it a go, yes. But then, when did they start cutting interest rates? We've been told in March. And why March? Well, March is very important because that would be historically, if you look at the previous cycles, historically, from the last time they start actually, increasing rates until they start cutting rates, it's bang on. Bang on. Now it can go longer, it could be shorter, whatever. Historically, on average, it happens to be bang on. And so, if it's not March, is it the next meeting after? Is it 2 meetings after? Look, once that one stimulus ends, it's not too long until the next begins. So keep that in mind. The inflationary forces are at work. This is showing us the deposits, both with the large banks and the small. And certainly, there's no question about that. When we look at the large, they're losing out. And I think part of that is what's going on with money markets. Because, hey, I don't want to leave it in the bank. I don't want to just leave it in my traditional bank right now. I want to put that in a place where I can earn 5% on it. And the small banks, I think people are concerned about different things. They're not necessarily trying to earn anything. Maybe they're trying to just put it in the bank, keep it safe, and that's the way it goes. But you can take what you want from that. And this is just showing us the regional banks. So despite the concern, and I'll show you, you stayed until the end, the big concerns for banks right now, you have this. Regional banks, they don't seem to care. They don't seem to care what's going on right now in the financial industry. They should. Banking crisis plays out at America's smallest lenders. Rural community banks are at risk from giant underwater bond portfolios. And so this becomes a big problem. Are they going to actually admit? No, they just go, just like we saw last year, they go right off the cliff, Wile E. Coyote style, and then we find out about it. It's the same thing that happened during the financial crisis. It wasn't until all the problems were revealed that things started to come up in the news. Is it suspicious at all? Well, you tell me. Look at this, where you're looking at these banks in a crisis. They are dealing with this, but what else do they have to deal with? U.S. banks could get slammed with another $160 billion in losses as commercial real estate faces the biggest crash since 2008. Guess who holds a lot of that commercial or supporting a lot of that commercial real estate? It's the small regional lenders. This is the biggest part of this whole mess. This is the big concern. Is the Federal Reserve going to stop their temporary emergency funding program? We'll see. I'm not so sure, but if they do, then you have this crisis getting even worse. And so I am very interested to see how this all unfolds. What do you think about it? How do you think it will play out? And when will the Federal Reserve begin their next cutting cycle, their next money printing cycle? Will it come as a result of some of these smaller banks starting to topple the medium banks, starting to topple the large banks? Or will it be as a result of something else we haven't even seen yet? It's a very interesting circumstance. Everybody on my Money GPS Finance Live class is already ahead of the game because I break this down into each possible detail. And I give an update every single Friday. We go for 2 hours over Zoom, small class. I get into that, the money mirror method. They are much further advanced than the general public because they know it all. They have seen this all, and I've been tracking it week to week, and so it's expected. It's an expectation because when we're looking at it like this, I mean, it can't be avoided. Look, if you want to get in on that, I would welcome you in. I think it would be fantastic to see you there. The link is in the description. You can get all the information. So you go to that link at the top of the description, read through the whole page, you hit apply. That will email me and we can get the conversation going. I hope that you'll be there. If you found this informative, hit that thumbs up button. When you do, you're supporting the channel and notifying the algorithm. This is some good stuff. So I'll see you on the next one. Take care.